Welcome to Pandemic Proofing Your Benefits Program. I'm Gary Cassidy, the Director of Wellness and Employee Education and Communication at Corporate Synergies. Today's presentation is going to take us into two different aspects of the benefits program. The first is going to focus on enrollment, and the second will be looking at your wellness or your well-being program. To start, though, I think one thing we can all agree on is that the upcoming open enrollment season will definitely not be business as usual. So, for the first part, maximizing your virtual enrollment experience, we're going to be talking about that was then and this is now, defining communication, channels of choice, speaking to your generations, and communication strategy. This looks familiar, or it did at least look familiar to all of us back in January, February, maybe even the beginning of March, where we're all in the office together, collaboratively working, looking over each other's shoulders as we work on the laptop or the desktop, passing iPads back and forth without any consideration whatsoever, and just coming together as a group and sharing ideas and coming up with solutions. However, that was then, and this is now. It's a complete departure from what many of us have been used to for a very long while, what we're very comfortable with, and we associate that with our daily routine. But it's interesting that there are still some things, whether we're working in a large group or working independently, self-isolated at home, that still hold true. The first is that on average, only 14% of benefit plan participants understand baseline employee benefits education terminology, such as deductible, copay, coinsurance, and out-of-pocket maximum. The other side of this, though, is that on average, 40% of benefit plan participants get their information from other employees. Now, with our current situation and everybody not being in the office, this may be an opportunity to reduce that number down. And it's an opportunity for employers to really take control of the narrative and become the resource for their participants to get the information that they need, the way they want to read it, and at the time that they need to read it. So to start off, we're going to start to talk about communication. We're going to start to talk about awareness, participation, engagement, action, and audience. 6 things that are going to be important for us to understand throughout this presentation. So let's start out with communication and awareness. Most communications focus on driving awareness and participation. Now, while this is true, I think that this could be just maybe just a little bit more specific. So I'd like to say it in a different way. Most communication strategies focus on driving awareness and participation. The difference to me in this is that I don't trust just one flyer or one poster or one brochure to be the be all end all solution for educating participants, because it's just not something that would be expected that one communication would do it all, and that you can guarantee that if you give them a multi-page document that they're going to find the important information that you want them to understand, which is a lot of times when we look at communication strategies, we look at it as more of a drip marketing campaign where you give them small bits of information over time and hoping that over that time they'll eventually start to get the message that's been reinforced over several weeks. So now let's take a look at engagement. However, it's important to recognize that participation always equals engagement. Now, if you were standing in front of me or sitting in front of me, I'd ask for a show of hands to see who agrees or disagrees with this statement. But I'm just going to jump right in and say that and use this as an example. Let's say that you have a Zoom meeting that's very important. You're going to share important company information or benefit information or return to work information. So you send out a communication, an email to your participants. And your participants are now aware of this meeting. They register for the meeting, so they're participating in the meeting. But when they get there, some of them are listening intently, some of them turn off their cameras for the Zoom meeting so that they can continue to do work. Some of them just mute the meeting altogether so that they can at least say that they were there. I don't think that's the kind of engagement that you're looking for. So what I'd like to say instead is, however, it's important to recognize that participation does not always equal engagement. So it's important to understand that that's a factor in the process of trying to engage your population. The last two factors we're going to take a look at are both action and audience. The true test of engagement is the action taken by your audience. And at face value, that is absolutely true. But again, I'd like to dig down a little bit deeper. The true test of engagement is the measurable action taken by your audience. So what do I mean by measurable action? I'm going to use an example that's probably the easiest to understand. As an organization, you decide in the next open enrollment period that you're going to offer a consumer-driven health plan offering either a health savings account or a health reimbursement arrangement. So you send out communications, you create awareness, you have participation in webinars and in the posters and the postcards and the flyers that you send out. And after open enrollment, you're able to look at your results and see what kind of engagement that you actually had. Depending on the percentage of people that you wanted to see make the move into that plan, you can see how successful you either were or you were not when you did that. So that's a very clear-cut case of seeing the engagement as a measurable action. But I'm going to take it even a step further and say that it's a measurable action taken by your target audience. So let's say you have a specific generation. You have your 20s and 30s, and you feel like they're in the wrong plan. So you want to send communications that speaks specifically to them and their needs and their goals and their objectives about why it's important to make that move. You could have some people, you could have 3 plans and you want to, and hardly anybody's in the second plan and you want to get them out of there. That communication would need to be focused specifically on that population and the actions that they could take. So a lot of times it's really understanding who you're trying to get to take action, or if you're looking at to do it company-wide, it may be different types of communications that go out so that you're able to speak to each individual generation without just sending out one broad communication. Which brings us up to the importance of utilizing new channels of choice. So channels of choice, I'm going to break it down into 4 main areas. We have the network, which is also the strategy. This is the development of the strategic and tactical aspects of your annual campaign. That's employee polls, focus groups, strategic vision, tactical timelines, refine your messaging, identify annual metrics, and review your analytics. This is where you build your plan. This is where you develop your strategy. This is where you get information from your participants about what's meaningful to them. The next you want to do is you want to start to build out your signal strength or your choice, making decisions about how to deliver content via multiple channels of choice: print, email, podcasts, video, apps, text messaging, internal collaboration, social media, video conferences, peer recognition, and team meetings. All of these that float around the strategy. So you may ask, why are there so many? Because you have so many different generations and you have so many different types of employees in your organization, people who are in the office, people who are out of the office, people who are remote, people who are traveling all the time, that having a wide variety of communication channels of choice allows you to provide information to them in a way that they're looking to engage with it, so that if they don't see the flyer, they're not completely left out of the process. Or if they're never in the office and they don't see the poster, they're not completely left out of the process. The next we want to look is at the network towers. We call this reporting. Identifying resources that deliver metrics focus on benefits, wellness, and culture. So you send out a communication through one of the channels of choice, but you want to know that people read it, that they've done something with it. And that's what these reporting resources in the towers actually are. And it covers everything from employee advocacy and on-demand learning to mobile marketing and social media, enrollment platform and payroll systems, all the way up to a wellness portal or the company intranet, excuse me. But I think one of the most critical aspects of the channels of choice that you need to spend some time on and you need to think about are your blackout zones or your outliers, because understanding your blackout zones helps narrow or expand your channels of choice. These are people with limited or no computer access. These are people with no intranet access, people who are constantly on the road or off site, their work site, the spouses, retirees, manufacturing and production, shift workers. Imagine if you have a bunch of people traveling on the road, sales guys, whoever they are, they have their smart device on them, but that smart device doesn't connect to the intranet, and the intranet is where you put all your important company information that you want people to know. How are they going to get there? How are they going to get that information? You need to take these things into consideration as you consider your strategy and your channels of choice and implementing and encouraging people to go to those reporting resources. So, what are the unexpected benefits when you choose to utilize multiple channels of choice? And what we're really going to talk about here are speaking to the generations. Who are they, and how are they each unique? So, speaking to the generations, why does it matter? Because each generation takes away something different based upon their point of view. And that can be as a result of their age, their gender, their health risks, their marital status, their family size, socioeconomic status, personal experiences, and other significant driving factors. The thing to remember is broad answers produce broad results. So, who are these generations? We're going to take a look at each one. We're going to break it down by when they were born, social markers, what their ideal leader style is, what their work style is, what their learning style is, and how they like to be marketed to. So, 1943 and younger. These are our traditionalists. Their social marker, World War II. Their ideal leadership style is a commander. Their ideal work style is disciplined. Their learning style is formal, and you want to market to them, send them print. Don't don't send them to a website, don't give them a link, don't do any of that. They want a piece of paper in their hand that they can read and that they can reference and that is useful to them. The next generation we're going to take a look at are the baby boomers, 1944 to 1964. A social marker for their generation could be the moon landing. Their ideal leadership style is a thinker. Their work style is experimental. Their learning style is structured, and is marketing just broadcast, massed information sent out across the board through multiple channels so that they'll get the message. Next up, we have Generation X, 1965 to 1980. These again, the social marker is the reception. The ideal leader is the doer, is someone who's actively leading and involved in the process. Their work style is independent. Their learning style is participative. Their marketing style is direct and targeted. They want things that are specific to them. They don't mind getting a letter that says, "Dear Gary, we know that you have boom, 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 and this is important to you, and here's where you can get more information." We have Generation M or Generation Y, otherwise known as the Millennials, 1980 to 1996. Social marker for them can be 9/11. Their ideal leader is a supporter. Their work style is immediacy, immediate recognition, immediate promotion, immediate progression through the organization. Their learning style is interactive. Their marketing style is online or linked. Don't give them a piece of paper. Give them a link, give them an email, share the information that way, and they're happy. The last generation we want to take a look at is Generation Z, 1997 to 2012. Their social marker, the financial crisis. Their ideal leader is a collaborator. Their work style, very high expectations. Learning style, multimodal. Marketing, in situ, that's real time or local. They want to hear it locally. They want to hear it from their people, and that's how they want to learn. Now, keep in mind that these are just general buckets. So if I look at myself, I was born 1965, so I'm right here. So I'm right on the cusp of a baby boomer. So I probably have some boomer in me, but I feel like I'm more of an Xer than anything else. My daughter, on the other hand, was born right here, and she is a hardcore millennial. No way to get around that. My son, born 1997, acts more like a Generation Xer. So it's really hard to pinpoint any one person individually, but these kind of give us some general buckets that we can look at to understand who we might be speaking with. So let's apply this to something and see how this works. We'll look at financial wellness, or having financial security and freedom of choice in the present and the future. So we're going to look at each of these and we're going to identify what are the challenges facing each unique generation. For the traditionalists, they need stability. They're very vulnerable. They're focused on health care and estate planning. Boomers, they're thinking about retirement hard. They're either there or they're about to be there. They like one-on-one advisors. They're concerned about gaps in savings, and they're concerned about long-term care. Generation X, they're dealing with retired parents. They're dealing with kids in college. This is also sometimes known as the sandwich generation because they're right in between those two. They want tools and they want financial planning. Millennials, they're dealing with student loans, tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans. And they're worried about managing their money, consolidating, and retirement. And then we have Generation Z. They're focused on savings, they're focused on emergency fund, they're focused on budget, and they're focused on spending habits. One really interesting thing here is if we go from T to Z, it tells one story. But if we look at it from Generation Z back up to T, we can see how the previous generation affects the point of view of each of the different generations. Generation Z sees all the trouble that Generation M is going through with student loans and all these things, so they're really hyper-focused on savings, emergency funds, budgets, and spending habits. The millennials see all the stuff going on with Generation X, with retired parents, kids in college. They're dealing with student loans, they're trying to manage, consolidate, they're starting to think about retirement. And then Generation X looked at the boomers and how they're worried about things, and then Generation T is just trying to keep what they have to last them as long as it possibly is. But imagine you send out a 401k communication to this entire population, and it's a broad 401k with just basic blocking and tackling. It's going to resonate probably with B and X, the boomers and the Xers, because that's where they are in their life right now. But Generation T, the traditionalists, they're going to be, I'm already here. I don't need to hear this. Generation M and Z are going to say, I'm not there yet. I can't even pay off my student loans. What are you going to ask me to put money into a 401k for? So here's the problem. If you were to send out another communication about financial wellness based upon their experience with the first one, B and X are going to listen to it. T, M, and Z are going to completely ignore it. And that's something that we want to help try to avoid. So, what are the underlying stressors? According to a study done by Career Builders, an employment report found that nearly 10% of workers making more than $100,000 live paycheck to paycheck. More than 25% of workers do not set aside any savings each month. Nearly 75% of workers say they are in debt, and 50% think they always will be. I think this might be the millennial category. And then more than 50% of minimum wage workers say they must work more than one job just to meet ends meet. But what's the underlying truth? Is that almost 8 out of 10 U.S. workers live paycheck to paycheck. I don't know if any of you can remember back to a time when you were in that situation. I certainly can. Having to make those situations of how am I going to pay my electric bill? How am I going to pay my rent? I need food, but I also need to pay for medicine, but then I got to pay for my car insurance. Living paycheck to paycheck, dollar for dollar, places an inordinate amount of stress on people. And then go to them and have that conversation about, hey, time to invest in your 401k. And their thought is just, I'm just trying to get by. So the communication to each one of those generations needs to be layered with an understanding of the socioeconomic and all those other statuses that kind of come into play. Because the goal of any communication, whether it's financial wellness or otherwise, is to try to create a powerful personal experience that will resonate and provide useful information for them regardless of the generation that they're in at the time. And to do that effectively, to get those channels of choice, to speak to the generations, we need to create a comprehensive communication strategy. And we do this with four major areas. We discover. We identify barriers to communications, your blackout zones, your people that are hard to reach. You identify existing channels of choice. You consider new channels of choice. You review your current communication strategy. This is where you do your thinking. Then you plan. You identify short and long-term goals and objectives. You also, good business model, identify short and long-term metrics. Create a strategy that helps you achieve those goals and ensure leadership is fully engaged in the strategy, because all this information, as great as it is if you can push it out, if your senior leaders aren't promoting it and supporting it, and your managers and your supervisors, it's not really going to go anywhere within the organization. And then you want to implement. We want to ensure the strategic timeline is followed. We want to ensure information is delivered to the right population at the right time. You want to add additional communications as necessary to support the strategy. And then probably most important is you want to reevaluate. You want to review the process and identify changes. Ensure that channels of choice are reaching the desired generations and geographic targets, and that you're adjusting the communication strategy as necessary based upon feedback or whatever else you've seen going on in the industry or within your organization. I'll give you an example. of a client of ours, and we're going to look at their pre-COVID-19 strategy, and we're going to look at their COVID-19 strategy. So prior to COVID, their enrollment strategy was pretty straightforward. They were using print, email, and live meetings. We did the planning meetings. They produced 3 very useful communications and PowerPoints. And this PowerPoint they were going to use for all of their live meetings. And these live meetings were going to happen 2 or 3 locations a day, maybe 10 people in each meeting, but they wanted to make sure that their message got across about consumerism and about the health reimbursement arrangement, which is where they really wanted to drive their participants to engage in. And then prior to open enrollment, they had the typical communications, the postcard, the poster, the flyer, the email, the brochure, the benefit guide, the PowerPoint, and then in between enrollment ending and beginning, they had a reminder, email, flyer, and postcard going out. And then they had post-enrollment communications about for people who enrolled in the health reimbursement arrangement. That was then. When COVID-19 hit and people were not in the office and not as accessible, they had to completely come up with a brand new strategy. Their main communication folk tool was Zoom. Not only that, they recorded the Zooms and they put them out on a resource that participants could find, and they could see the videos there. They still use print, they still use electronic, but they also engaged in employee recognition and incentivizing them, which was a key factor in this. So again, the center of their strategy was Zooms. They had 1, 2, 3, 4 different pre-enrollment Zoom meetings. 2 of them focused on consumerism, part 1 and 2. The last 2 focused on the health reimbursement arrangement, part 1 and 2. They sent out a postcard, a flyer, and an email to announce it. They had reminder emails going out. They sent out print communications to support the communications, the information people were getting in those Zoom meetings. And they did that throughout the process. And then when they went into open enrollment, they had the printed electronic available communications. They had another Zoom meeting in between when enrollment began and ends to answer questions, and they had the follow-up communications. So what was built into the strategy? Definitely the Zoom meetings. But the important thing is this, because they did so many, the meetings were only 20 to 30 minutes long. They were very short, they were very sweet. They didn't just do one meeting that was an hour, hour and a half that had all the information because they knew it wouldn't be consumed in the right way. And on top of that, they recorded and placed those Zoom meetings into a central location for viewing for people who couldn't attend. It was interactive. After each Zoom meeting, participants were provided with a voluntary follow-up activity. Watch a video, read a flyer, or take a quiz. This acts as a reinforcement or primer for the next or previous presentation. And then there were the incentives. Participants who attended all the Zoom meetings or watched the Zoom meetings online were put into a raffle drawing, and I think they had 4 winners and they gave away $100 gift cards for that. Doesn't have to be deep, but again, it's creating a multi-dimensional experience using multiple channels of choice. And before, we'll jump back real quick, they were doing multiple meetings with maybe only 10 or 15 people at each meetings. They narrowed it down to 4 Zoom meetings where they were getting 200 to 300 people at a time. So it was much more time and manpower effective for the organization. So we're going to move into part 2 of this presentation, which is pandemic proofing your well-being program. And here we're going to talk about B, B, and E. I'll tell you what that is. New dimensions, evolving work-life dynamic, adjusting to the new normal, and very important, staying compliant in the new normal. So let's jump right in. We all know three basic components of a wellness program are, again, I call them B, B, and E. Blood, which are biometric screenings, broccoli, also known as health risk assessments, and exercise, also known as physical activity. Why do they form the foundation of a lot of wellness programs? Is because they work. And when we look at biometric screenings, they work because they are measurable. They are measurable over time, and they help us create a baseline of the overall health or risk factors in our organization. It's also repeatable, which means year over year this can be done and we can see progress over time. It also helps us to stratify the risk factors in a population, low, medium, or high, and see the migration from high to medium, medium to low, or even low jumping up to high. It tells us things about our population and their habits. It's great for detection of disease states, hopefully before they become a major condition. They help us develop strategies for prevention, and biometric screenings, along with many other factors, help form the foundation for an organization's ability to measure their hard dollar return on investment. Health risk assessments, very similar. They help us measure the organization. They create a baseline. It's repeatable. It helps stratify health risks, but also health choices. It provides education for the employee, and acts as a preventive measure to hope to get participants to take active steps before the disease state increases. This helps to add value. It helps a client measure their value of investment, which are their soft dollars. When looking at biometric screenings and health assessments, I always like to look at health risk assessments as perception and biometric screenings as reality. Because I say health risk assessments, and I know some of you are going to roll your eyes, and I'll tell you this. People lie on a health risk assessment for one of two reasons. Either one, they're afraid that if they find out they don't eat enough broccoli, they don't exercise enough, that they're going to be put on the list and they're going to get fired. The other reason, though, and the more important reason that people lie on a health risk assessment, is that they're not actually lying. They're telling their truth. They feel that what they are doing and where they are right now with their health, from exercise habits to eating habits to work-life balance, they feel like they're actually healthy, which is why it's important to have the health risk assessment and the biometric screenings working side by side, so that those people who feel that they are healthy get the opportunity to see, no, you're actually at risk. And then the last part of this is physical exercise. Physical exercise helps reduce risk, it increases prevention, it helps manage health conditions, it increases mood, it helps manage weight, and it also helps to make a stronger musculoskeletal system. This also forms the foundation of a very strong value of investment. But what are the limits of the insights that they provide? Well, there's a saying out there, especially in sports, don't think, just play. And to quote Yogi Berra, baseball is 90% mental and the other half is physical. But seriously, the problem is that 90% of athletes spend 100% of their time working on the physical and fundamental aspects related to their sport. In reality, sports are 100% mental. What one thinks directly influences how one feels and how one behaves. So, what drives your employees to be successful? Well, I can tell you this. In-range biometrics do not guarantee a perfect employee. Positive health assessment results do not guarantee a driven employee. Regular physical activity does not guarantee an engaged employee. Because at the end of the day, a productive employee is created through an amalgamation of physical and emotional influences. And a profitable company is driven by the synergy between productive employees and the efficiencies that they can find in their business practices. So while the BB&E, the blood, the broccoli, and the exercise form a solid foundation of a wellness program and a healthy employee, a productive employee is actually driven by multiple factors that go beyond the big three. And that's what we're going to talk about next, are the new dimensions, additional dynamics that can influence your employees' health and productivity. And these are physical, taking proper care of our bodies so we can function properly and optimally. And this goes just beyond exercise and nutrition. These are many, many other aspects. Financial, having financial security and freedom of choice in the present and the future. This deals with stress and their ability to function every day. Spiritual, finding a balance in our lives by aligning our values with our actions. Nutritional, focusing on creating a healthy diet to help balance mood and anxiety levels. Emotional, understanding and accepting ourselves and dealing with life's challenges. Maybe like being in a situation where you were previously working in an office full of people that you know, and now you're stuck at home working all by yourself. Social, building and maintaining positive relationships that add value to our lives. Or in this case, finding new ways during COVID to be social and add value to your life. Environmental, being aware of our environment and the impact we have on the world around us, which can include community, volunteering, donations, many, many other things. And then occupational, fulfilled with our jobs and career paths while we maintain work-life balance. Now, pre-COVID-19, organizations were really starting to make progress in this area. They were including financial, they were including nutritional, they were including emotional. But some of these, not so much, because they didn't really seem relevant. They seemed nice to haves, but they couldn't really see the true value in it. But from what we have seen based upon the mental and emotional health of participants during this pandemic is that all of these additional dimensions are becoming more and more meaningful and need to be integrated more fully into wellness and well-being programs. Again, this is us now, working at home, isolated, looking for new ways to be social, trying to find that work-life balance and connect all the dots. This is creating stress. And this is something that needs to be addressed. A lot of it's a balancing act. It used to be somewhat easy to find work-life balance because when you were in work, you went to work and you dealt with work. When you came home, you were there focused on life. Now, we all know, and nobody here I think can disagree, that when you were dealing with your life, work bled in, and when you were at work, life bled in. But still, in a lot of ways, it was easier then to find a balancing act between work and life. But what we're finding now is that it's not so much of a balancing act, but it's turned into a juggling act because working remotely and working at home, work and life are right on top of each other. There's no getting around either of them, and you have to be able to balance both at the same time and be effective about it. So what are the new challenges? Mental and emotional health has become the focus. And why is that? Because daily routines are disrupted. Employees are expected to be self-driven and self-focused. Think of all the employees that you have that this may be the first time they're actually working remotely and not in that office situation. If you would have told me, I tried about 20 years ago to be a freelancer and work at home, I did not have the discipline or the focus to do it. 10 years ago, I started to get better at it, and now I'm very comfortable in this sort of a situation. But again, it's a transition and it can create stress. Employees and employers are forced to reassess work life balance. Introverts thrived. This is great, working at home. Extroverts suffered. Where are my people? Generations faced different challenges. Retirement planning was addressed and readdressed. Every time that stock market goes up and down, people are wondering, do I sell? Do I hold? What do I do? What's my retirement going to look like? Personal goals and expectations were adjusted. They had to be adjusted. New personal responsibilities became stressors. Think about all the people at home with children who became teachers and didn't have that time when their child was going to school. And lots and lots of other things that just started to come into the mix. But now we need to look at the other side just as equally. Let's not forget about going back to the office, which is also incredibly stressful. Is it safe? Will I be putting my family or coworkers at risk? What if I have an at-risk person living with me at home, child or elder? How are the schools handling COVID this fall? What happens if I'm still a full-time teacher to my children at home? What happens if it's a split schedule at my school? Will my job accommodate me? If I don't or can't go back into the office, will it be held against me? All these thoughts are going through people's heads. It creates stress, which impacts their ability to be productive. So these are things that need to be addressed and need to be talked about. So what has suffered from a wellness point of view in the new normal? First, BB&E, blood, broccoli, and exercise. It's starting to get a little bit better, but when we were deep into it in the beginning, biometrics were limited. Preventive care opportunities were limited. Physical activity was limited. People had sheltered at home orders in place. Steps and activity completely suffered for many reasons. Employees weren't even thinking about that right now. They had a lot of other things that were on their mind than how many steps they were getting for the day. Opportunities were limited. Again, sheltered in place ordered, especially if you're a national organization and people were spread out all across the country. You need to take into account that not everybody had the same opportunities as everybody else. And then you had the gym rats who found out, my God, my gym is closed. What am I going to do? I can't go to my gym. I can't work out without my gym. Live anything is gone. Lunch and learns, health fairs, on-site biometric, company picnic, fitness facilities, happy hours, water cooler talk, done, gone. But even with all of that going on, and this is specifically for clients who have ongoing wellness programs, it's important that even with all of these new challenges in the new normal, that you still ensure that your wellness plan and strategy stays compliant. And for right now, we're going to put aside the pending final ruling from the EEOC, which we all know is coming soon. But I want to take a look at how was the strategy affected. And this specifically is a client whose wellness program went from 4/1 in 2019, and it was ending in 4/1 in 2020. So the COVID happened right at the finish line of their wellness program. So this is what their wellness program had. Your health profile, which included biometrics and the HRA, people complete that, they get 40 points. Preventive care, 10 points each, up to 40 points. Body mass index and waist, up to 20 points. If they weren't in range, the reasonable alternative was to complete the weight loss challenge. Physical and emotional well-being challenges, 5 points each, up to 20 points. Tobacco, 10 points if you were tobacco-free. If you weren't, the reasonable alternative, complete the MD quit line, and then you are considered tobacco free. Financial well-being. They were working with a credit union. They had opportunities for training, 5 points each, up to 10 points. Steps in activity. 1 point equals 70,000 steps, up to 10 points. Occupational well-being. They had their SkillSoft programs that they had online, 2 points each, up to 10 points. Summer picnic. Come to the summer picnic, earn 10 points. 2 points each for every article they read in the library, up to 10 points. And social well-being, 2 points for each community activity they completed, up to 10 points. And that was pre-COVID strategy. And now right at the end of their program, we have COVID issues. So what happened? Biometric screening's not readily available. They need to come up with an alternative point strategy. Preventive care, not possible to get all preventive care screenings. They need an alternate point strategy. BMI, not impacted because they can still do the weight loss challenge. The challenges themselves, a bulk of them were step challenges, and they wouldn't be necessarily possible for all. So they needed to come up with some alternatives. Tobacco wasn't impacted. Financial wasn't impacted because these were online. Steps and activity may not be possible for all, alternate points. Occupational, not impacted because these were online activities. Summer picnic, canceled due to COVID-19. They needed alternate points. Library, 2 points each, up to 10 points, not impacted. That's online. Social well-being community, charity walks, runs, rides canceled. They needed alternate points. So a lot got shifted at the end there, but they still needed to meet the ACA requirements for a wellness program. So new solutions in the new normal. For well-being, focusing on stress, focusing on emotional health, focusing on mental health, on preventive care, on self-care, on mindfulness, and on social health. With preventive care for that client who all of a sudden they needed to provide alternatives, preventive care took on a new meaning for them. It just wasn't the basics, dental, colonoscopy, vision, hearing, things like that. They had to add new categories like a breast self-exam or a testicular self-exam, or signing up for telemedicine, or using telemedicine, or refilling prescriptions, or engaging with a psychiatrist or therapist, things of that nature, things that could happen. And then we go on to activity, where we look at challenges and things because we couldn't do step activities. So they focused on stress challenges, nutrition challenges, weight management challenges, well-being challenges, which can be anything from musculoskeletal to heart health to better sleep and things like that. COVID-19, financial, sleep. For community activity, if you couldn't do runs and walks, you could still donate or if you could safely volunteer for activities to earn community points. I had a client who, for the last 7 years, a walking program had been a critical part of their wellness program. It was the centerpiece of it. For this year, they couldn't do that. So we came up with a COVID-specific challenge for them that combined healthy habits when working remotely, healthy habits when sheltered at home, and also COVID safety. And that was what they used to do this year. The other area is virtual everything. Zoom meetings, yoga, meditation, dance, meetings, happy hours, bedtime stories, and you're hearing me go down this list, and you're like, what is he talking about? That one client, again, who lost a lot of points, they engaged with a yoga vendor who had online yoga that their participants could engage with to earn points. Same thing for meditation. And the client also had separate groups within their locations who did line dancing once a week. So they found a way that they could all log in via Zoom and they could do it together all at the same time and engage as a community that way. And I'm going to use my company as an example for these last two, happy hours and bedtime stories. Our CARES committee came up, they did an amazing job during this. They had multiple activities during the week to help connect us as a culture. One of them was the virtual happy hours that were either regional or company-wide. And we also had a guy who was an excellent storyteller. And twice a week, he would be online so parents could log in and he would tell their children bedtime stories as a way to take a little pressure off the parents and kind of help them out during this very difficult time. It's important to remember, though, at the end of the day, that whatever part of benefits we're talking about, that successful employee engagement focuses on awareness, participation, and engagement. And that awareness and participation do not automatically translate into engagement. And that it's important to provide measurable action with each communication you deliver. Ask them to do something. And lastly, do not lump your participants into one collective group. Speak directly to your generations. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to the Pandemic Proofing Your Benefits program. Again, I'm Gary Cassidy, Director of Wellness of Employee Education and Communication. My email is here. There are several links where you can find other videos and articles that I've written. We hope you enjoy your time at EB Rise, and we look forward to you joining the additional rooms available throughout this event. Thank you very much.